Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Go for Launch podcast. My name is Liam P, and today we are interviewing the owner of the Rocket Vlogs channel, Brayden Carlson. How you doing today?
Not too bad. How about you? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing great. So I figured we would talk about kind of at least what I see you guys is famous for, the 12-inch Wildman Punisher, the Hash Slinging Slasher, and the 9-inch Arcus.
Yeah. Those are fun rockets. It's kind of our familiarity in the rocketry world. If nobody's familiar with my YouTube channel or our podcast or whatever, they probably know at least about those rockets.
Yeah. Although when I actually first stumbled across you, it was the I think it's quarter scale, the missile downscale you built and flew on 5 4Js and an M.
But the Honest John.
Yeah, the Honest John. Yeah.
Yeah, that video has I think 31 million views or something like that on the shorts one, which is pretty insane. So that's that makes sense that's how you found me.
Yeah. I stumbled across it and I was like, huh, who is this? And I didn't pay any attention to you for 5 months after that. And I stumbled across the channel and I watched I think it was the Bob's video. I watched that video and I kind of got hooked. And then it was around it was right after you did the Blue Jay video that I subscribed to Patreon.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean the Honest John is actually a kit. It's long out of production, but it was made by a company called Smokin' Rockets, which is owned by Ken Allen from Performance Hobbies. I think technically the company still exists, and actually somebody told me after I did the video where I built mine before I flew it, somebody told me that they messaged Ken, and Ken still had a nose cone, so we made him one. So
that is really
who knows?
Cool.
You might be able to hit Ken up and get one of those.
That would be awesome. And I wonder if I could. I don't think I could match your 35 million view count. I still can't figure out how to post a short.
I honestly, the view count on that is astonishing. I mean, that video is where over 130,000 of my subscribers came from, and like you said, you kind of watched it, subscribed, and then left for a while, and that's kind of the story of most of my subscriber base.
Yes,
the subscriber number is really impressive, but if you actually look at my videos, there's not that many people watching them, but there is a niche diehard group of a few hundred people that are just there for everything.
Yeah, that's I was looking at Joe's count. He's pushing 8,000 subs now, but his videos regularly get 200 to 300,000 views.
Yeah, that's I call my channel the great value or dollar store version of Joe's channel pretty often.
Yeah, I can see how that works. And then mine is the dollar store version of yours.
I will say though, I mean, I've watched a bunch of your videos, and the editing and everything that you do is impressive. You're clearly putting the effort in. I think you're at a ground level sort of situation, but just keep doing it, and make sure you're doing it to have fun, not to gain any popularity.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's really fun. I actually went out to the Tri-City Rocketeers on Saturday, and I'm not putting it up on YouTube because I didn't get that much, but I got some footage, and a college team flew a hybrid rocket, and I got to go talk to them for 15 to 20 minutes.
You should post it. I mean, that's the ultimate thing, right? It's before my shorts kind of started taking off, what people watch the most is my launch videos, and they still get a lot of views. Because I've had my channel for a really, really long time, and in 2019 I quit my job and decided that I was going to spend all of the money that I had basically to fly down to Arconia because LDRS was going to be there, and I hadn't been to Arconia.
Not Matt and Taylor, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
But,
I remember the intro to the 12-inch Punisher video, and like just seeing the view count on the LDRS videos was insane.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I had no expectation of it. I actually didn't even know it was happening until after I quit my job. I was driving for DoorDash basically full time while I was trying to build out a career in automotive journalism. So I'm in marketing now, but that's what I've done for the past few years is review cars and write reviews about cars and stuff like that. So, but,
yeah. And then the whole crash.
What was that?
The crash of Motor Biscuit that led to the clever naming of Severance Package.
Oh, right. Yep. That's what happened. But so I was driving for DoorDash and I was waiting for an order. So I was just sitting there scrolling through YouTube videos in a parking lot and saw a YouTube recommendation for my own channel from another channel that I was logged into. And it said it had like 200,000 views. And I was like, what is happening? So I logged into that account and saw that the live view count for the past 48 hours was like 400,000 across this LDRS videos. And
that
was
crazy.
I went from, I actually had already had 1,000 subscribers because I got people to come over from my car YouTube channel. But I went from 1,000 to like 5,000 that day or something like that. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's kind of like my 3D printed rocket video on Pathfinder. Well, I always refer to it as Pathfinder B2 because I have a tiny little rocket over there that's called Pathfinder. Unfortunately, the rod whip ripped a fin off and it spun out of control and planted itself in the ground.
Yeah, rod whip's a classic. There's not a lot of people flying that even really know about that concept anymore because rail buttons are just kind of the standard at this point.
Yeah, I've actually never flown rail buttons, rail guides of any sort.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so Dream Tribute and Pathfinder B2 will be my first rail guide.
Nice. But yeah, so what did you want to know about the big rockets? There's plenty to say there.
Yes, yeah, a 30-minute documentary on it.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun to make, but there's a lot that didn't make it into the videos. I probably had like 6 or 7 hours worth of footage of us building that thing. And
yeah,
there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that's kind of hard to convey on camera. Like, for example, the Punisher, and the Arcus. When we built it, it was the middle of summer in Taylor's house in Trimble, Missouri. So it was like 90% humidity and probably 95 degrees in that garage. So
yeah,
we were having epoxy flash cure in.
Yeah, I remember that.
The West System stuff would cure in like 5 minutes. So we were just racing against the clock as we were doing everything.
Yeah, that had to have been a pain. Could you have imagined if you built your N1000 in the garage?
No, well, so I actually did build it in my garage out here, and I live in Southern California, but I live in a part of it that gets extremely hot. So there was a couple days where it was probably upwards of 100 degrees inside that garage. So that's why a lot of that video actually, it's really hard to tell, but it's in my living room. I brought the whole rocket inside and did fillets on a folding table in my living room because it was way too hot in the garage. And actually, Shane's rocket, the 5-inch Punisher that he flew on, the 03400, even in our living room, power is really expensive in California, so we're like kind of careful with when we use the AC and when we don't. And the house was like 75 on the inside, so it wasn't like incredibly hot, but it was just a perfect storm for the Proline 4500. And Shane had one of his fillets flash cure as he was pulling it, like literally in the middle of the fillet. So I don't know if he put that in his video or not on Podstar Propulsions, but he was having a bad time. And he called me because I had just left, and he wasn't having fun with that one.
Yeah, I would not be having fun with that either. Yeah, I actually just watched the video of him flying it on the 04500.
Oh, 3400. The CTI.
Oh, 3400. Yeah.
That's a gnarly motor. I've got one too. There's one in my garage, just waiting
What
for
are
me
you
to fly
putting it in?
I don't really know right now.
Minimum diameter.
No, that's so
That thing would
scary. I
shred.
saw Tony Pipe, great rocketry forum thread. I think his name is Air Force Captain on the rocketry forum. He also worked for Evolution Space for a while, but he's out of that company now. I don't know if he wants me to say what he's doing right now, so I'm not going to. But
Yeah.
I'll tell you afterwards. But he did. He was building his level 3 rocket, was an 3400 minimum diameter with.
Oh yeah, I
no
remember you
composite
saying that on the
layup.
podcast.
Yeah, and I got to see that rocket fly in person, and the coupler folded in half as it passed
No.
through Mach 4.
Mach
And,
4?
Yeah, so I'm terrified of the concept of doing a minimum diameter 3400. I did consider doing another full scale Arcus because I kind of want redemption on that.
Yeah, the N1600 buried that thing.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was super cool, but yeah, I would like to have the rocket back. It's in the ground somewhere at Friends of Amateur Rocketry, but
I would gladly go
3400
looking for that thing. Not
actually,
that
a couple different people have. My friend Chase, he's been in a couple of my videos.
Yeah,
he was at
he
the end of the
found
2-stage video.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he found my K455 as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Him and his dad were out. Well, they were still pretty far away from it, but they were out close enough that they heard it come down. And he thinks he has a good idea of where it landed. So there's a chance.
That's terrifying.
Some way that he might find that thing, but he's about to leave for engineering school, so my hopes are going down. But even in a full scale Arcus, the 3400, it's like way over Mach 3. So it's pretty gnarly. What I think the most likely scenario is that it will become a shakedown flight for my 8-inch Punisher project.
Oh, yeah. Isn't that the same one you're putting the P motor from Bryce in?
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly kind of still in pipe dream mode. I like to not talk about things that I have like in my mind because I don't like to set expectations for things that are really hard to achieve. And there's nothing trivial about flying an 8-inch rocket on a 6-inch P motor. I have most of the stuff to build the rocket, and Bryce is perfectly willing to make the motor. And I'm just going to buy all the chemicals and stuff for him to do so is the plan. Because you can't sell a research motor, but I can buy him the stuff to make it.
Yeah.
So it's just there's monumental fin flutter with this fin span versus the thickness of the fins. I'm looking at doing carbon fiber on the fins first. On each side, vacuum bagging it at 90 degrees compared to where the tip-to-tip carbon will be. And I'm not a big fan of tip-to-tip carbon fiber in most cases. We talked about this in our most recent episode of the podcast that has not come out yet. But
the live episode?
No, so this will be, that was the bonus episode. The episode with the tip-to-tip stuff will be episode number 80. It's going to be called something like Pointless Things in Rocketry.
Yeah.
But it's... go ahead.
On the Evil Genie bonus episode, I told someone they wanted an upscale Arcus. I told them that they had to fly it on the Evolution Space N16,000.
Yeah, you'd be hard-pressed to get one of those motors. I don't think they're going to make one for anyone else at this point. I don't even know if they'd make another one for me at this point, but who knows? Yeah. It's possible.
Yeah.
What I really would like to do that I had talked to the owner of that company about briefly was getting another Arcus, because the full-scale Arcus was a 4.5-inch diameter rocket that flew on end burners. So I was like, you can see on Evolution Space's like social medias and stuff, they're developing an end burner motor. So I was like, what if we did a 4.5-inch one and I made a minimum diameter Arcus that actually flies on an end burner?
That would be
actually
awesome.
Probably go like 120,000 feet, which, again, like I said, I don't like to just like put things out there like that because that's a cool concept, but I can't afford it. I don't have the skills and know-how to fly a rocket that fast, that high. Although an end burner wouldn't be as fast as something else, but
Yeah.
I mean, there's all kinds of barriers going beyond even 50,000 feet. So to just kind of like ho-hum chop together a 100,000 foot flight is pretty far outside of the ballpark.
Yeah, it's not trivial.
Right.
Yeah. So speaking of the Arcus, on the 9.5 inch, when you guys when the full diameter smoke grain turned the back of it into a campfire, have you guys repaired that yet? And is it ever gonna fly again?
Yeah, we were briefly talking about flying in an LDRS this year, but with how hard it is to get rocket motors right now, I'm not sure if that's actually going to happen. We were talking about doing another pink cluster like we did.
Oh, that'd be cool.
I think Taylor wanted to do K695s, and no, let's see, he wanted to do an M1600 red line in the middle, and I think 4 K1100s.
Oh yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Yeah, if you guys do bring it down to LDRS, I'll finally be able to see a big rocket fly.
Well, there's a couple of big rocket projects. Again, I don't know if these are things that people want out there in the public, but you're on my Patreon.
Yeah.
I think Chase has talked about it a little bit in the personal projects, but don't worry. Yeah. If we don't fly it, there's going to be big rockets.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's not entirely true. When I first met Bryce Chanis, I was down at Sod Blaster. It was my first launch ever. And I show up and I hear them call out a Methalox rocket. I'm like, oh, cool. It's a liquid propellant rocket. After watching your guys' episode with him, on, mixing motors, I think I finally, realized that was a big rocket flying on his Methalox, solid propellant.
Right.
And it looked like Methalox.
Yeah. That's the propellant he wanted to do with the 6-inch motor that I'm, flying in Imagination Land in an 8-inch Punisher.
Yeah. Yeah, it's in the same Imagination Land as my Space Shot and, in 5800 to M2020.
Yeah, I mean, you're setting yourself up for failure with wanting those motors in the first place, because they're real hard to get.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it was crazy because the reason I had such high optimisms when you guys first read my first Patreon comment, I had actually just gone onto the CTI website, just gone onto the Aerotech website, and I looked for both motors. They were both in stock and I could get hardware and everything. I come back the next day and they're both gone. Yeah,
I know. I believe Tim had a couple of them briefly. He had 03400s as well. That's how we wound up with ours. But, yeah, they go fast. College students, like their teams, love the N5800. However, what is it called? Aerotech made a propellant X load for the 9824 AD case, and I think it's an N5770, which is basically the second coming of the N5800. There's, I believe, a demo fire of it on the YouTube channel, the Aerotech YouTube channel, and that motor looks downright devastating. And I believe it's maybe part of their they're doing that whole Aerotech consumer motors to space competition.
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
I think it might be associated with that, but there's an impulse limit, I believe. So I think I think the
P.
impulse limit is O.
Oh,
it's P.
I think it's P because like they set it up for like 045 or 03500 first booster to some sort of M.
Right. The M5500 or 05500 to the new 75-10240M. It's an N actually. Jane really wants to fly one of those minimum diameter.
Let's see how that goes.
Yeah, that's sort of like the CTI M2245 as well, which is baby N5800 territory, basically. There's a lot of people that have tried to fly a minimum diameter, and a lot of people that have wound up picking up pieces because of it.
Yeah, I was actually watching one of your, it was the last balls video, and they called out an N5800 minimum diameter flight, and I was like, yeah, that's gonna shred. And then I heard them say, this is by Bryce Chanis, and I was like, or Chanis. And I was like, yeah, never mind, that's not gonna shred. And it worked.
That was actually a boosted dart. So it was minimum diameter, but there was a extremely heavy, I believe, 38 millimeter unpowered sustainer sitting on top of it. That flew out of my tower, actually.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
It did some pretty severe damage to the aluminum tubes at the base of the tower, but they're replaceable.
Yeah, I could see how that would happen. Yeah.
I flew my N1000 out of it like 2 days before as well, so that aluminum was put through some pretty serious torture.
Yes. That N1000 flight, the bobs was cool.
I couldn't believe the onboard footage. Shane and I had rented an RV. Well, actually, shout out to my boss, Eric, rented us an RV for balls, and I was sitting in the passenger seat just like staring at this onboard footage. And what's crazy is that rocket was sponsored by Great Western Buildings.
Yeah.
And one of the stipulations was that it had to have onboard video. If not for that stipulation, there wouldn't have been onboard video. I had zero intentions. I've been plotting a minimum diameter 4-inch rocket probably since I was your age, and never once had any intentions to put onboard video on it because I just wanted a crazy flight that works, right? So
yeah.
Now, though, after seeing that, my N1560 project that's in Imagination Land as well going to fly at balls this year, but I'm moving again and selling a bunch of stuff, so we'll see how that actually works out.
Yeah.
Now, I'm obsessed with the concept of trying to get a camera in there.
Yeah, that's going to be cool.
The problem is with that rocket, it's going to be extremely tough because it doesn't even have a coupler. The nose cone slides right onto the end of the motor case. It's a much bigger motor. No, it's still full diameter airframe. Well, it's a 4-inch airframe, full length of the rocket. But instead of a coupler, the motor case is going to stick out 4 inches, act as the shoulder of the nose cone. And then I'm going to use a 3-inch coupler or piece of airframe that I bolt right to the top of the motor case for electronics.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're trying to squeeze as much altitude as you can out of it. Right.
So the current design has some, again, imaginary number, but I think it's like 72,000. I don't foresee it actually going that high. I would love to see 60.
Yes.
65 would be a treat. I'm applying for the end motor altitude record paperwork stuff if I actually get to do it this year, but I don't really think that that's on the table. It'd be great if it is, but so I'm trying to work out how I can cram one of these Mobius minis in there because they're really cool cameras and they record, good enough footage.
Yeah,
but it's going to have to be sideways, basically sitting on top of the closure. A hole in the nose cone.
Yeah, I actually I was on a stream with Joe, or I was watching one of his streams, and he was taking apart one of the GoPros that he used on the meat rocket. And he was like rephrasing that these cameras are basically ovens that just happen to shoot footage. I told him that he should make an aluminum structure, put the out of like the backings, and then stick a piece of meat in there and cook 2 pieces of meat, one using the aerothermal heating and one using the GoPros.
Yeah, the problem is as soon as GoPros get hot, they shut off.
Yeah.
I've run into that plenty. Yeah, I mean, that's what he does is next level. I mean, I'm just doing hobby stuff. Like, that's all I've ever done. Joe's actually engineering stuff and pushing boundaries and doing crazy stuff. You couldn't pay me to take apart a GoPro and repurpose all of its pieces.
Yeah, that's kind of what's been pushing me. I mean, for the past year, I've been learning to code. I've been I made like a list of like everything I'm going to need to learn, like rocketry wise, to be able to do a space shot eventually. And I'm like ticking things off. I actually have a flight coming up it might be at LDRS and it might be at the Tri-City Rocketeers. I don't know, but it's the second coming of my dart rocket. The last one exploded on the pad. This one will be flying a homemade parachute, and it's going to be testing out parachute aerodynamics and structural integrity.
Gotcha. Do you know why your first one blew up?
Yes. Yes and no. I'm not exactly sure. But when you and Taylor were recording the cluster ignition on the thermite, and you were talking about the guy at FAR who had his motor blow up, and none of the grains were burned. That was actually the day I met Bryce. We went out to look around, found the grain, and it's not burned. It just like goes up the rod and explodes, and the motor core is not burned at all. So I don't know what happened there.
Interesting. What did you just use the igniter that comes with it?
Yeah, I just used the igniter that came with it. I didn't put, I wasn't messing around with thermite, clearly, but, I did not put anything in that motor or on it, or on the igniter. Yeah.
I wonder if was it a single-use motor?
It was an LMS, G79.
Yeah, okay. I wonder if it just blew the nozzle out, because, when motors Kato, sometimes they extinguish themselves, or when other things happen. There was a bunch of K1275 grains left from my 3-inch Punisher's destruction. Out at FAR. They were only, halfway burned.
Yeah, I found out that apparently putting your name in the title of the video gets quite a few views, because I made I took the Incident Millennium Edition song and I put it over some footage and a few titles, and it I put Dream Tribute for Brayden Carlson, and it got 75 views in 10 minutes.
Oh wow. Yeah, you just gotta be careful with. I personally, it doesn't bother me, but some people, if you use their footage or use music, and there's problems you can run into. Trust me.
Yeah, I know. I get all my I get all my music from Tim, the Everyday Astronaut, and I've asked him a few times if I can use it, and he says I can use it. So I've always checked that I can use it.
Yeah, it's the copyright. There's a bunch of companies basically that pay people to strike channels down for copyright use. So, just be careful. But
yeah, that's the one thing I'm always careful around when I'm using footage, is I don't want to accidentally get struck like Joe did by MIT with the ITAR strike while he was at Disneyland.
Yeah, I've had a bunch of different instances where even when they were considered fair use, I've had copyright strikes. I had DMCA's. I had one threatened a lawsuit actually for copyright infringement on my other channel a handful of years ago. So yeah, it's something to avoid for sure.
Yeah, my first few videos were so I was not I was not really good at shooting lots of footage of me building my rockets, so I would do a lot of I would just take footage that represents it. I quickly realized that that's probably not a good thing. So in my more recent videos, I've been moving more and more towards using all of my footage.
And that's what I was gonna say too, is I've noticed you've been, focusing more on producing your own stuff, which is ideal. And yeah, I mean, like I said, the fair use is an interesting thing. If you're using stuff for commentary or, news, or there's a few other carve outs, educational, you're technically okay, but that in a lot of cases doesn't stop people from trying to cause it and have an issue. And actually YouTube's gotten pretty decent about when you what's the word I'm looking for here? When you dispute it, there you go. But there, you know, some places are not going to be that kind. And as a person who's been threatened multiple lawsuits over the years, I highly recommend avoiding it.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the questions I've written down here is if someone, was like outside of the hobby, they'd never flown even an A motor in like an Estes kit and they wanted to get into rocketry, what would you suggest to them?
Well, we just talked about this on the podcast, actually. I think it depends on what they're interested in. Because if they're interested in flying high power, there's plenty of high power kits, like a lot of lock precision 2-inch, 3-inch kits. Some people jump straight to fiberglass, and that's, you know, if you're going to do that, do that. But I highly recommend, you know, reading a lot. And most of all, I recommend to people, you know, go to nar.org, go to triply.org, find a club near you and go talk to people. Say, hey, you know, I want to get into this. I need to know where to go. You're going to get a variance of answers from people depending on who you ask. Some people are going to say, hey, go buy an Estes rocket and fly a C65 first. I disagree with that, but you kind of work with what you got in the rocketry community. And if your local club is going to try and pigeonhole you into that, that's unfortunate. But, you know, there's plenty of information on the rocketry forum. I try to do some instructional videos. I've done a few for Wildman. There's a great one from an old AMW kit that the late great Gloria Robinson gave to me. I did a build video for them. And that's just a great all around demo for building a big cardboard rocket. Or I did a 4-inch Lock Patriot as well.
Yeah.
Another great one. That rocket I built in an hour using only 5-minute epoxy. And I gave it away to a teenager at NXRS in Brothers, Oregon. And him and his dad had just done his level 2 cert. So I gave the kid the rocket, and then my friend Rob gave him a DMS J motor. And I was like, ooh, cool. I built that with 5-minute epoxy, Rob. He's like, oh, I guess we'll see what happens. And it worked.
Oh,
which
that's
is pretty
cool.
crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
But yeah, to answer the question, sorry, I took a roundabout answer there. You know, find a local club. Don't start doing anything without doing, you know, your due diligence on it. But if you want to build a 4-inch rocket to fly on an H motor for your level 1 as the first thing you do in rocketry, by all means do it. Groups of college kids do it every single day, basically.
Yeah, you should. If that sounds crazy to you, you should see what I did. I flew an Estes rocket, and then I jumped to an E motor, and then I jumped to an F to a D, and that flight did not go great.
Oh, a 2-stage.
Yeah, 2-stage F to a D.
What was it?
So it wasn't even a kit. I had a very small 3D printer back then, definitely not as big as my 2 next to me, but I had a tiny 3D printer, and I was like, this could be awesome, and I'm going to 3D print a rocket. I 3D printed a rocket, and like, it was kind of like similar to Starship, staging wise now, cause it did, it was doing the Estes hot staging, but like, the stages were fused together, and what I was counting on was that the motor was going to, fire so violently that it would snap the very thin connections. It worked. But the only other two-stager I'd ever flown was an Estes kit, C65 to C65. I didn't understand at the time that you needed a 0 in the first stage.
Right.
At least with the Estes kits. I also, I would consider this the dumbest and most stupid failure anyone can make. I figured, hey, Falcon 9s don't have fins. This probably doesn't need fins either. And I wasn't flying at a club. So I flew it, and it just spun out of control and wiggled across the ground. Luckily, we were up at a field in the middle of nowhere, and it was middle of, like, the snow had just melted.
Yeah, that's good. That's a tough call, but at least you learned from it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Now
the truth be told, the M to K that Taylor and I built is still the only 2-stage rocket I have ever flown.
Yeah. Yeah, I have two. I've flown 2-stagers. I was planning on building a third, and now I'm working on a fourth that I was talking with Jonathan Gabry, and we're doing a little competition. Who can go the highest on L, or not on L, on lower than level 1 motors.
Nice. This is all very much reminding me of my teenage years with Bryce and my friend Manny, and my friend Alex. Bryce and I had a contest to see who could get to a mile in altitude first.
Yeah, that's actually what inspired me. Like, I saw that video where you and Bryce were talking about that, or the podcast episode, and I immediately went, you know who I should hit up about this? And I went into the chat and I said, hey, Jonathan, do you want to do this? And he was like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't talk about it a ton, but I grew up super poor, so I didn't have money for rocket motors. I talked about flying rockets a lot, and I just kind of built them out of garbage and, like, would mow lawns and stuff and just try and build rockets that pretty much never got to fly, which I guess one could argue is pretty much exactly what I still do, build rockets that don't fly.
Yeah.
But so I was doomed from the start with that contest with Bryce, because he was, actually flying rockets. But Jonathan's crazy. I mean, the first time I met him and his mom came up to our tent. He wanted to know if he could take a picture with us. I think it was when we were flying the Arcus the first time. And I was like, what are you flying? He said, I'm flying a 3-inch Punisher. I was like, oh, sick. What are you flying it on? He said, an L1000. I was like, what? Okay, let's go. So
that would be a sick flight. And that is what I dream to do. But I probably will never do it until I turn 16.
It was gnarly. And then actually last year at Airfest, he did a minimum diameter 3-inch Punisher on an L2200, and it worked as well.
That had to be cool.
Yeah, he's doing everything I wanted to do as a teenager, but he's actually doing it.
Yeah, he's doing everything I want to be doing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you just gotta work your way up is all. I mean, you look at my N1000 flight, I had a 38 millimeter, a 54, and a 75 minimum diameter before I touched a 4-inch rocket. And, I flew my first L motor when I was 16. And then didn't fly my first minimum diameter N until I was 29. So
yeah,
there's definitely expedited paths you can take to get there. And a lot of it was that, I couldn't afford to throw away my tracking equipment, or couldn't afford to destroy these electronics if something went wrong. So I was kind of afraid of flying high until I really started hanging out with Taylor and flying in Argonia more. Prior to LDRS, let's see, I guess it would have been Tripoli Vegas Springfest when I flew my 3-inch Punisher on a K1100. The highest flight I ever had to that date was 9,200 feet on an L1000 or something like that.
Yeah, the highest flight I currently have is 2,000 feet on a rocket that I built. It was the King of Random. It was not I didn't make the sugar motors, but it was the rocket that he made the sugar motors for. I built that and I flew it on an E12, and it went 2,000 feet, and that's currently my highest flight.
Nice. I mean, you got me beat probably at your age, because I I just flew. Well, I don't know. I had Aerotech Mustang. I flew on G64s quite a bit. That was pretty cool. That's a good rocket.
I've attempted to fly a G79. It got 15 feet off the ground before it exploded. But
yeah,
I'm going for my redemption with that motor, and I'm going for it insane tip-to-tip glass on a G79 minimum diameter. It's basically the Bobs at 29 millimeters, and I am scared as heck.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be all right. Well, I think that's the one you sent into our podcast, right? Were those balsa fins?
Yeah, those were balsa, so I tip-to-tip glassed it. And
yeah, it's a good
first time ever glassing, well, second time glassing something, first round really, and I am shocked at how well that came out.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
it's above all else, just like anything else in rocketry, it's you get out of it the amount of time you put into it. So like we spend your time making things carefully and you get a better result in the end. So that's good though. That's fiberglass is a lot easier to work with than carbon because carbon obviously is dark black. So it's really hard to tell when you've properly wetted it out and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's actually Tony Alcacer. I think Tfish38 is his YouTube channel. He has really good videos on making your own nose cones and rolling your own tubes with fiberglass and doing tip to tip. He does what he calls the 1/3, 2/3 full method. And I love Tony because he just does everything like as basic and simple as you could make it. Like his deployment bags are made out of old jeans, and
that is so cool.
He hand rolled a fiberglass tube around a 9815 360 case, and then
it's not a bad idea. That case is gonna fit.
Yeah, and then he hand molded a nose cone out of plastic, and then used the mold to make a fiberglass nose cone. Then he took that rocket to balls and flew a minimum diameter on an N, and it just worked. It was called Tough Enough. It's a really cool series.
Wow, that is amazing.
So yeah, Tony is one of those people I've looked up to a long time since I was young. Him, Jim Jarvis, Vern Knowles, Terry and Dan Stroud, obviously the Gates brothers.
Yeah.
But
I actually had never heard of the Gates brothers or Millennium rocket cases or any of that until I found your channel. Because like up until then, it was BPS Space and Everyday Astronaut, and Everyday Astronaut doesn't fly rockets. He reports on them. But like it was Joe, and I just saw the CTI cases, and that's all.
Yep. Yeah, it's old stuff, but that's what Taylor and I aspired to have when we were like 10. So that's why I'm so obsessed with all of it. I don't even know how many Millennium and Desert Fire cases I have now, or like old AMW snap ring stuff, old Cosden snap ring stuff, Cosden East snap ring stuff. There's a lot all over the place.
Yeah.
I need to be stopped, but I'm probably not going to.
I'll gladly take anything hands if you want to stop.
Let's see, the problem that I'm running into. I just sold an L2200 today because I've had it for a couple of years and realized I'm not going to fly it before we move, and I need the money more. And there's thousands of dollars worth of Animal Motor Works and Cosden hardware and Aerotech hardware and Dr. Rocket hardware sitting in my rocket stuff that I have duplicates of a bunch of and could sell, but I'm not going to. I have probably upwards of 30 Animal Motor Works reloads that I'm not going to get rid of because they're all I wanted to fly when I was younger.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Before I flew the Dart, before I flew it, like I was just on, well, now that I've been looking at Wildman and the Aerotech website, I'm kind of surprised at how much I've been overpaying for my motors, but I was looking at the Apogee website. I was like, okay, I need a motor for this rocket that's 29 millimeters and will send it decently high and decently fast. And I came across the G79 and I was like, oh, this is cool. It'll come in one piece. It showed up and I was like, oh crap, I have to assemble this.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's something that I messed up during loading that caused it to detonate, but
Yeah, well, I mean, when I was about 15, I put together a Cosden G motor, and I forgot to put an O-ring on the nozzle that gave me the same result. Well, it burned through the case and destroyed my rocket, but it's just, attention to detail. We just gotta make sure you got everything. There should be O-rings sealing both ends.
Yeah,
But
I have a G79 and an F32 Blue Thunder. That's going to be my first Blue Thunder motor. Both sitting in the garage in my grains closet. I call it a closet. It's actually a box, but my grains box. And I mean, the F32 is ready to fly, but I'm scared and waiting until I have enough room on the GoPro to shoot me loading that thing, and then I'm going to go fly that darn little rocket to Mach 1.5.
Yeah, good luck. Yeah, just be careful when you're putting together. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's gonna be fine. After doing some looking at the motor that KO'd, I was like, I realized that I used JB Weld. I used JB Weld to seal the closure on, cause it said to use 5-minute epoxy, and I was like, I don't have any 5-minute epoxy. I don't got any money. I'm not gonna go buy 5-minute epoxy. I'm just gonna use this JB Weld I got right here. And that motor looked terrible at the closure end.
Interesting. Well, I mean, that could be your issue right there. JB Weld should be fine to seal it, but you have to make sure it's properly sealed. I would assume anyway. I'm not going to say that it would be fine because I don't know for sure that that's the case, but I can't imagine a scenario where JB Weld wouldn't be an acceptable replacement for generic 5-minute epoxy.
Yeah. Moving on. If someone wanted to, they're in rocketry, they're flying pretty regularly high power motors like M's and N's or even L's and K's, and they want to get into building big dumb rockets like the 12-inch Punisher and 9-inch Arcus, what would you tell them?
Well, first I want to make a note that K is the best motor size in my opinion because it's the most cost effective for loudness. So I mean, M's and N's are cool, yes, but really, really expensive.
Yes.
Prohibitively
expensive.
Yeah, believe me, I unfortunately know my credit card took a hit when Chris Short had an N1560 sitting in his trailer. It took me months to become the proper owner of that rocket motor. But anyway, I think the best thing to do if you want to build a giant rocket is approach it the same way that Bryce Chanis does and do it in a situation where it's big but reasonably affordable, reasonably attainable to build, because the Punisher cost us thousands of dollars. And granted, we built it to go fast. If you want to build a big rocket that also goes fast, there's no way around it being expensive. But if you just want a big rocket and you're cool with a big low and slow flight, sonotube, foam nose cones, all of that is fantastic. And you can build, I think we priced out the Arcus and it was something like $500 with all
not
the hardware
expensive.
and fiber and everything like that.
Yeah,
Which, I mean, $500 is a lot of money, but it is also a 15-foot tall, 9-inch diameter rocket.
Yeah, that's going to be, if you are able to keep that rocket around, that's going to be a sight for eyes at launches.
Yeah, and the single motor flight was really cool just because that motor was awesome, but the simplicity of just flying that thing like a normal rocket was awesome. So I've been kind of advocating for clusterless flights on that particular rocket again. Yeah. But we can never fly the Punisher without a full motor load.
Really?
Well, it's possible, but it would be against our... we'd be mild men. We have to be a wild man if it's a wild man upscale.
Yeah. Go ask Tim to approve the Beaumark drag race.
Tim would have no problem with that. I think we could easily get away with that at Midwest Power. But we have aspirations to fly the Punisher to 20,000 feet, which is pretty absurd for a rocket that size. But
yeah, that's going to be an insane flight for a 12-inch, 200-pound rocket.
Yeah, it's pretty gnarly.
Yeah. What is your favorite glue other than JB Weld.
Man, you're starting fires. The glue threads are like a classic rocketry forum argument. Yeah. I love JB Weld, but I honestly, for like its all around usability in the world of rocketry, it is ridiculously expensive. I can acknowledge that, but I love West Systems epoxy.
Yeah, it's also stupid thick.
Well, it's really thin.
No, I was talking about JB Weld.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, West Systems I've never tried, but I see you in your videos and you're just pouring it onto a rocket.
Oh, yeah, it's like water. If you don't put anything in it, it's seriously like thinner than maple syrup.
I can imagine that would be a pain to make a rocket with just water pellets.
Well, it's a laminating epoxy. So it's intentionally thin because they use it to build boats. That's what it's actually intended for. It's basically the same as Total Boats laminating epoxy. And arguably, not even arguably, factually, it's not as good as actual structural epoxies, like Aeropoxy structural epoxy. Actual aerospace grade structural epoxy, and it's great. DP420 and E120 HP, or the Infinity Bond E120 and E420. All of those are better for sure. In high performance stuff, kind of a necessity. For my high performance stuff to this date, I've liked Proline 4500 a lot. Yeah. But it is, it's got a little bit faster cure time than you might be expecting, and it's easy to make a giant mess with it. And once it stains something, it's almost guaranteed never to come out.
Yeah, you were like panicking when you got it on your fingers when you opened the N1000's box and you found the Proline in the bag.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a long time to get off of your fingers, but Tub of Towels does a really good job for what it's worth.
Yeah, I mean, waiting on that Tub of Towels sponsorship.
Series and JB Weld.
Yeah, if JB Weld wants to sponsor me, I will go all out and I will make the hot glue rocket of Joe's. I will just replace the hot glue with JB Weld.
Well, I've talked to Joe about like thinning JB Weld and using it as a laminating epoxy to roll fiberglass tubes and make like a proper JB Weld rocket in the past, but that's probably not something I foresee in the near future. I did email JB Weld's PR people and ask if they'd be interested in a sponsorship deal. I haven't heard back from them. So far it's not looking great.
Yeah. How did you get started into rocketry? Like, your dad was into rocketry, or as far as I understand it, he was into rocketry when you came of age, shall we say, to start flying rockets.
Well, my dad kind of has like the same born-again rocketeer story that a lot of people have. He flew rockets when he was young in like the 70s and 80s. And then when I was about 5 or 6, we started building Estes rockets together. But he had never flown anything bigger than a C motor, as far as I know. At one point, a family friend gave me 2 Aerotech Mustangs and an HV Arcus when I was probably around 11. And that's when my dad and I kind of got introduced to the world of reloadable motors, things bigger than C, like going up to F and G motors. And I used to ride my bike to the hobby shop all the time when I was younger. And I found pamphlets because I would go there and look for the high power rocketry magazines because they stocked a few of them. And I found pamphlets for Tripoli, Idaho when I was probably 11. And so we went out there. Took me a while, but I finally convinced my dad to take me out there. We saw Vern Knowles fly an Animal Motorworks M2500. And from there, I was just like, I don't know how, but I'm going to do this. So I kind of dragged my dad into high power, which is not an uncommon story, but my dad actually likes rockets as well. So he didn't just sit there for me to fly high power. He still flies high power to this day. Yeah, that's kind of like me. So after that F to D motor catastrophe, I probably shouldn't go into more details because it was not good at all.
But after that, I was like, yeah, I cannot do this here anymore because I'm going to do something really bad before I get anywhere near 2,000, 3,000, anywhere, any altitude record. So I remembered we had gotten a rocket magazine, rocket mailed to our house, a few weeks ago, or a few months ago, and I was like, I remember that one club. And I looked up the Tri-City Rocketeers, and lo and behold, Sod Blaster was coming up in the next 2 months. I was like, I've always wanted to put a rocket in space. Let's start working towards that. So my first goal was I'm going to build my own parachutes. And I built Dart in the better half of a month and a half. And I flew it, and it didn't get off the pad. I 3D printed another one, and I flew it, and that one went to 500 meters and then came in ballistic.
Jeez. Well, at least you're starting somewhere, I want to go to that launch site. It looks like a lot of fun. I used to be really close to it when I lived in Idaho. It was only like 3.5 hours.
Yeah, it is awesome. Like, Sod Blaster's awesome. I was out there last week. I got to see my first Nike Smoke fly.
Nice. How big was it?
It was 5.5-inch polecat.
Nice.
Yeah, we were
the best
walking.
One.
Huh?
The best one.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we were walking past the lineup, and I told my dad, I think that's a Nike Smoke. It looks like a Nike Smoke, but it's not painted. And then they called it out, Nike Smoke, and my dad was like, hey, you got it right. That was a cool flight. I think it was, they flew it twice. White Lightning and Blue Thunder.
Nice. K1100?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's Taylor's signature. I think he's flown his Nike Smoke on a K1100 like over a dozen times. I could be wrong. I don't know, but it's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, we also had upwards of well, not upward, but we had close to 20-mile-an-hour winds out there. So like people were like pulling their chutes out and putting in streamers. I was
right.
While they were doing that, I was over at the motor stand just looking at which motors do I want to have eventually. I was like L1000, I500, this, that.
Who's the vendor out there? Is it Scott Binder still?
Yeah, it's still Scott.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, he had a good selection of stuff. I wonder what he's got in stock these days. Probably a lot of stuff people want and can't get anywhere else.
Yeah, you should, during Sod Blaster last year, I walked up and I was looking around and I was like, cool, L1000s, I500s, you got any ends? Purely just because I wanted to look at them, and he was like, yeah, I got some in the back. They're in boxes. If you come back tomorrow, I'll pull them out and I'll show you.
Nice. Yeah, Scott's a cool guy.
Yeah.
He has a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, I saw some pretty cool motors just at the stand. I was like, I wish I had money to do that.
Yeah, you'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
It is really expensive. That's one thing you can't argue.
Yeah, I spent an entire day snow shoveling. It poured snow recently. I spent the entire day snow shoveling. I blew through $220 to buy my two motors and supplies for a Dream Tribute and Pathfinder.
Nice. Yep, it goes fast. That's for sure when you're building rockets.
Yeah. So, what would you say is your favorite motor in general that, like, if you could only fly that forever, you would fly?
Probably the Animal Motorworks M2200 skid mark.
Yes, a skid mark. Yeah, I would fly skid marks all day.
The M2200 is sort of the skid mark. Like, it was back in the day, that was the end all be all. Like, that was the staple of a skid mark motor. This was before CTI had got the rights to produce them. It was just an Animal Motorworks thing, and they, through the graphite nozzle, because of the titanium sponge, I don't know what the magical combo is, but the noise that a proper M2200 makes is absolutely devastating.
Yeah, that's
And
the
I've
one you're
been-
hoping to fly in your Nike Smoke, right?
It'll be in the 6-inch Dark Star that I built with my dad about 12 years ago and 14 years ago. Wow. Okay. But I chased that dragon for 15 years, I guess, trying to find one. I finally have one. So I'm genuinely more excited to fly that than the N2800 skid mark, which is unarguably way, way more rare. But
finding old motors. Yeah. Like whenever I'm in open rocket, whenever I'm simming rockets, the only 2 boxes I have ticked are Aerotech and CTI. And like recently I haven't been, more recently I haven't been ticking CTI because like most of their motors are unatamium.
Yeah. There's Loki too. Loki makes some really cool motors, but they're a bit pricier, but Scott's up until recently, I believe, it was like a one-man operation. So, he doesn't have the production volume that CTI and Aerotech are capable of, but his motors are well worth it. They're super good.
Yeah, fun fact for all the viewers, on the channel, I am currently, I'm not sure when it will be released or when it will be on the channel, but I am currently developing and designing, a 3-inch rocket. It's similar to a rocket that's being designed by someone. It's a 3-inch rocket and it's designed to be able to fly on anything from a K100 to an L1040 Loki motor. It is.
I have one of those.
Maybe you should put it in that. I'll give you the rocket for free.
I'm going back and forth on selling that motor because it's really expensive, and like I said, I'm trying to move. Initially, I was going to fly at NSL West this year, but it's, to be perfectly honest, pushing the waiver, which makes me a little uncomfortable. And the thought of trying to recover a flight from 50-ish thousand feet out there is not really that enticing. And it's just, it's a $400 54 millimeter motor that I think I could sell pretty quickly. So
the case isn't helping that cost either.
It's actually just the regular 54 2800. The long case, the 58 or 54 4000 is the M1378 case, and the L10 or L2050, which is crazy. It's a full L basically in 54. And that's the current altitude record holder that I was kind of setting aim at with the L1040. So that's where I'm at. Is I don't really want to sell it.
But you also kind of do.
Yeah, I kind of just want to have no debt when I move, which would be fantastic.
Yes. Don't add me to the list of people that would eat that motor up. I would love to buy it, but I am currently, I am trying to not get any debt, and most of my money is focused on getting Dream Tribute and Dart to flight.
That's fair. Yeah, I've been kind of trying to compartmentalize things that I'm actually going to fly, projects that I actually already have started or have everything for, rather than trying to add more stuff to the fire. So that's why I'm kind of like, well, I don't even have the rocket for the L1040 yet. And I don't really want to buy one right now. So I've got plenty of really cool stuff. I just got a 5.5-inch composite warehouse Patriot.
That's going to be
excited
cool
to build. And my Delamar and a bunch of other stuff that I need to do first. So I'm trying to be responsible.
Yeah. Speaking of responsible, what would you say is your greatest success in rocketry?
The N1000 flight's hard to pass up on. But I think just, I don't know. I want to say something philosophical, like, the fact that I'm still doing it and having fun is success in its own right, because so many people leave the hobby, but...
especially through their college years.
Yeah.
Well, it's no secret on the podcast that you didn't make it through engineering school.
Right. Yeah, one semester deep at Wichita State. Basically, only went to that school because one, it was the only engineering school that accepted me, and two, it was 45 minutes from Argonia.
But yeah, yeah. Let's just get to the closest school closest to the rocket pasture.
You got it.
Yeah. TCR is right in my backyard. Like, I'm really lucky. It's closer than far for you.
Yeah, I'm only about 45 minutes from Lucerne, but
yeah, it's closer than that actually.
Oh, nice. Pasco, Washington. I think that's how you say it. It's where I bought my car. Pasco, got it. It's where I bought my car.
That is hilarious. Yeah. Now that we have talked about your greatest success, what would you say is your worst failure?
I'm trying to remember what I said when we talked about this on the podcast. I guess we kind of just touched on all of our failures. I think probably the worst one's still my 4-inch Punisher with the M2050 that came in ballistic.
Oh yeah, the one with the pumpkins?
Yeah. I mean, it was preventable, right? I knew that one of the altimeters had an issue, and I decided to fly it anyway, thinking that one was going to be okay, and I immediately had to pay about $1,000 for that thought. So
yeah, I would say running up is the Nike Smoke, your original Nike Smoke, Ecoms. I don't know how to pronounce that.
Ecoms Ekin. I still hesitate to put that one on me entirely. I think you've heard that.
Yeah.
Story. Somebody suggested I change my ejection charges, and
I wouldn't put that. Reason. Yeah, I wouldn't put that entirely on you, but it's kind of embarrassing. Kind of like the guy who that cracked me up when I listened to that episode. The guy who like completely took over Matt's loading of a motor.
But yeah, people like to get hands-on, we'll say.
Yeah. What is your favorite rocket kit? And I'm gonna go out on a long limb and guess it's somewhere close to the Punisher.
That's it. For now, I think I have to say the 3-inch Punisher. But I will have a new favorite one that's publicly available soon, we'll say.
Yes. I will be getting that. I will get my hands on that somehow.
I'm pretty excited for it. The 3-inch Punisher has always been my recommendation because you can fly on anything from like an H550 to an L1090, but it's also small enough to fit in like check bags if you want to fly with it. So an L1090 won't quite fit in this new one, but it'll be good. It'll be good. I'm looking forward to it. I actually, after we finish up here, I gotta go finish putting some paint on it.
What's the paint scheme? Is it going to be Dreamsicle-esque?
Yeah, it's pretty much how all of my Punishers are. They all have the painted nose tip and then the two bands. One's the vent band. The only exception is my 5-inch one because it's got oil slick vinyl.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of white, that used oil slick vinyl. But my 4-inch Punisher was painted the same way, just metallic gold. So sticking with the classic.
Yeah, when I was trying to think of how should I paint Dream Tribute. And I was like, you know what? I should look up what the colors of Mourning and Grief are, because we're like, it's supposed to be like a tribute to Dreamsicle. And it turned out to be black and blue. So I took the Arcus scheme, the white body, red nose tip, red nose cone, and fins. I got rid of the red nose cone and I painted it black and blue fins. It looks really sick.
Nice.
Before we finish up, what would you say is your current goal in rocketry? Like, is there a flight that you're working towards that you would love to see?
Right now, what's primarily on my mind is my N1560 flight. Like I said, if it gets the end altitude record, phenomenal. But what I want above all else is it to be recovered and flyable again. Because it's quite a bit gnarlier than the N1000. The rocket's basically the same length, even though the motor is 8 inches longer. It's supposed to go almost Mach 3 when the last one barely eclipsed Mach 2.
Yeah.
And, another theoretical 20 to 25,000 feet on top of the last flight.
Yeah, that's going to be insane. Have you ever thought of doing a 4K split run cam for the camera on there? It's not as great footage-wise as the movies, but it's going to be a lot smaller, and you might be able to fit it on top of the closure.
Yeah, I've looked into them. I don't like the separate lens from body kind of setup stuff. I understand that it's super useful in this, but in my mind, somehow I'm going to mess something up and a shock cord's going to rip the ribbon cable, and that's the end of that.
Yeah.
The Mobius Mini is about half the size as a Mobius 4K that was on the N1000 flight. So it's a little bit easier to work with. Yeah. My big thing is I think one of the reasons the Bob's flight didn't make it to 50,000 was the giant hole in the side for the camera. And that's where I keep going back and forth on the N1560. Like, this motor is something I've been chasing for a while.
And you're probably
it took me a long time to find one. So if I'm going to do this, I'm like, I got to go all the way. And if that means I'm not putting a hole in the side of it for a camera, then I'll have just ground footage. Yeah. I've thought about maybe just putting the Mobius in there and running it, and then you only get footage descent? From the top.
Yeah. That'd be cool.
Because that's what everybody wants to see anyway,
Yeah, the altitude.
The black sky footage.
Yeah.
But yeah, beyond that, Taylor and I really want to put it 2-stage to 100,000 feet, but we want to do it way cheap. So, comparatively way cheap.
Yeah.
Right now, that's what our last 2-stage was, sort of a Pathfinder project for that. But what we want to do is another M2050, or maybe do an M1850 if we think we're going to need it, which I don't think we will.
Yeah.
But a 4 grain would be cool just because of what it is, because it's so small and easy.
Yeah.
And then the elusive Aerotech, I believe it's a K62, the N-burner DMS.
Yeah.
Which I've only DMS. Ever seen in the hands of an Aerotech employee, so I don't know if and when they're going to be available. But
yeah. Do you know Andrew Adams?
I know the name.
Yeah, he's a friend of Joe's. His big thing was, like, he was going to put a rocket into the solar eclipse, and he made like a big movie. Like 3 movies off of it.
Okay.
Yeah,
I know who we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. That is the one thing that is terrifying to me about the N5800 is how that motor folded his rocket in half, then going Mach 1 at just like a few hundred meters off the ground, and then sent it probably a few miles into the distance. And like, there goes a few, like 2 months of work and a few hundred, probably not hundred, but like a few $1,000s.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so like I've pretty much run out of questions. And I have no co-hosts, unlike you. You've got Taylor and Matt. Well, sometimes Matt and Postart to help out. But yep. I'm pretty much out, so I'm ready to wrap this up. Would we want to do the same intro or outro as you do for the podcast? Because I think that's going to be the easiest way to get this out. And
unplugs?
Yeah.
Sure. My name is Brayden. You can find me on YouTube at Rocket Vlogs. You can find me on Instagram and Snapchat, BigB1011. You can follow me on TikTok at Brayden Carlson 6. And go listen to the Anti-Gravity Group podcast. You can find it on YouTube at the Anti-Gravity Group or anywhere you find podcasts.
And you can find the first 70 videos on the Rocket Vlogs channel.
Right, yeah, good point. I've been contemplating migrating those over, but I have to do it one by one, so it's going to take a week to do it if I do.
My name is Liam. You can find me right here at Pendergast Orbitals. This is the Go for Launch podcast featuring Brayden Carlson from Rocket Vlogs. We will see you next time.